Now, because a lot happens in the Kenyan political scene, something happened 3 days ago that escaped people's attention until yesterday. Now, apparently, when President was touring the Embakasi part of Nairobi, specifically Pipeline, on Sunday, he talked about the power transfer from the county government of Nairobi to the national government. Now, we've been here long enough, and you remember when Sonko also transferred power from the county government to the national government sometimes back, certain key functions that were being overseen by General Mbadi. Now, in this particular speech of the president while speaking to the people, of course, of a pipeline in Embakasi area, he talks about getting into an agreement with the governor of Nairobi, Honorable Ruto-Sakaja, to transfer certain key functions, including dumping. Now, this is illegal. The president cannot announce it like that before it's publicized and before a formal documentation is done. We will bring you in the legal aspects of it, but first, listen to what the president said about this power transfer in the beginning.
Embakasi hoye! Pipeline hoye! Bwana Yesu asifiwe! Hebu nione mkono kwa mkono kwa mkono kwa mkono kwa mkono. Allah! Waswahili wanasema hayawi hayawi. Ni leo si leo bana. Si ni leo. Bas mimi nimefika hapa Embakasi. Na mimi nataka niwaeleze ndugu zangu watu wa Embakasi. Tumekuja kanisani, lakini vile vile mimi nataka niwaeleze na washukuru sana kwa sababu nyinyi mumekubali tuunganishe Kenya iwe taifa moja. Embakasi tunakubaliana my friends. Tumesema hivi, kuunganisha Kenya inaanza na hapa Nairobi.
Now that is where it begins. First, he just talks about it naturally and nationally, of course, saying that residents of Embakasi are part of the Nairobians that have agreed that Kenya be unified, which is a very good stuff. The opening, the reception, fiery. He's the president, of course, and he has visited this part of Embakasi, of course, so those people have responded to see him, others who have never even seen him, and of course to listen to him. And then he uses the same opening that the likes of Sifuna used in Busia of Ayawi Hua, and now talks about this consolidation of the country together for unity. So let's get to the part where the president says that these residents of Pipeline, I don't know if it's just them in isolation or the entire Nairobi residents, have agreed for this transfer of power before we dissect the transfer of power itself.
Nairobi ni mji wa muhimu sana. Nairobi ni mahali transformation ya Kenya itafanyika kwanza ndio Kenya iweze kwenda mbele. We cannot transform Kenya unless we begin with the transformation of the city of Nairobi. Na ndio sababu hiyo nimesema nikiwa hapa Nairobi, Waswahili wanasema ahadi ni nini? Si ahadi ni deni. Niliwaeleza watu wa Nairobi ya kwamba hapa Nairobi tutajenga affordable housing. Leo katika city ya Nairobi tunajenga manyumba 1169 ya watu wa Nairobi city. Na mimi nataka niwaeleze wa Nairobi, ile slums ziko hapa Nairobi, ndani ya miaka 15 tutakuwa tumemalizana na slums. Kila mtu atakuwa anaishi katika nyumba iko na maji, iko na stima, iko na choo, iko na maji, iko na kila kitu. That is how we are going to change Nairobi. Hatuwezi kusema Nairobi ni city na wananchi wa Nairobi wanaishi katika slums. We are going to change this city to make sure that Kenya changes. Nairobi hoye! Nairobi hoye! Jambo la pili, tumekubaliana ya kwamba tunajenga barabara mpya hapa Nairobi. Na nimekubaliana na kila MCA atoe priority road. Ile tunaendelea nayo kujenga saa hizi, tutaongeza another 80 kilometers ya watu wa Nairobi. Ndio Nairobi tuondoe takataka, tuondoe barabara ya matope, tuweke barabara ya lami. Jambo la tatu, mimi niliwaeleza tutaleta Nairobi hii maji. Tumeongeza mwaka huu, tumeongeza maji inayofika Nairobi by 140 million liters. Na nimekubaliana na viongozi wa Nairobi, kati ya ile dams 50 tunajenga na inaanza mwaka huu ni ile Maragwa 4 ambayo itaongeza maji ifike city ya Nairobi. Apart from the 140 million liters that are now available in Nairobi, we are going to add additional water by building Maragwa 4 dam so that we can increase the water coming to the city of Nairobi. Nairobi hoye! Nairobi hoye! Jambo la tatu ninawaambia watu wa Nairobi. Hii Nairobi imehangaika na takataka, ni kweli ama si kweli? Nairobi hii imesumbuliwa na takataka, ni kweli ama si kweli? Sasa mnisikize watu wa Nairobi. Nimeketi chini na county government, nimeketi chini na MCAs, nimeketi chini na wabunge wa Nairobi, na tumekubaliana mimi nitoe pesa ya national government, tuongeze ya county government, tuondoe takataka katika mji wa Nairobi, tusafishe mji wa Nairobi. Na mimi nataka niwaambie watu wa Nairobi, hiyo kazi inaanza tarehe 1 mwezi wa 4, tutaanza kuondoa takataka katika mji wa Nairobi. We want to make Nairobi clean and we want to make Nairobi a city that befits to be the capital city of the Republic of Kenya. Nairobi hoye! Mnasema tuendelee ama tuendelee bwana? Tuendelee ama tuendelee? Nimewaambia tunajenga nyumba 169. Ukienda hapa Mukuru utaona, ukienda kule Isli utaona, ukienda hapa Makadara utaona, ukiona pale Kibera utaona. Dunia hii inabadilika before our own eyes, and my intention is to get rid of slums in this city of Nairobi. In the next 15 years we want to get rid of slums in the city of Nairobi. Nairobi hoye! Na mimi nataka niwaambie inawezekana, mtu asiwaambie haiwezekani. Mwisho, watu wa Nairobi hoye! Tumekubaliana ya kwamba kama watu wa city ya Nairobi, tumeunganisha viongozi wote. Leo tuko na MCAs wote, wabunge wote tumeungana, national government imeungana na county government. Tuondoe siasa ya chuki, tuondoe siasa ya ubaguzi, tuondoe siasa ya ukabila. Nairobi hii ni cosmopolitan city, mahali wa Kenya kutoka jamii zote wanaishi, na hiyo siasa ya kuunganisha Kenya inaanza hapa Nairobi. Na mimi nataka niwaambie Nairobi, asanteni sana kwa kukubali tuunganishe Nairobi yetu hii iwe ndio kielelezo ya umoja wa taifa letu la Kenya. Ndio nimekubaliana, tumetengeneza serikali ya broad based government, ile ya kuunganisha jamii zote, ya kuleta watu wote wa Kenya pamoja kutoka sehemu zote za Kenya. Wangapi wanakubaliana tuungane jameni? Nauliza Nairobi, tuungane ama tutengane? Munasema tuungane ama tutengane? Wale wanasema tuungane nione kwa mkono, wale wanasema tuungane. Nairobi hoye! Mimi nawauliza wa Nairobi bwana, si nyinyi ndio mnachagua MCA? Si nyinyi ndio mnachagua mbunge? Si nyinyi ndio mnachagua governor? Si nyinyi ndio mnachagua rais? Niwaulize watu wa Nairobi, wakati mnachagua viongozi, mnachagua kwa sababu amefanya kazi ama kwa sababu ya sura? Ni kazi ama sura? Ni kazi ama sura? Ni kazi ama kabila ya mtu? Ni kazi ama dini ya mtu? Si ni kazi? Si kila mtu atachaguliwa na kazi amefanya? Si mimi nitakuja hapa na kazi yangu ya affordable housing, ya markets, ya barabara, ya kusafisha city? Si nyinyi mtaamua ama ni aje? Ndio mimi nawauliza wale wengine tunashindana na wao, pia na wao wajipange ama namna gani? Wajipange. Hii siasa tunaelewa bana. Sasa nimesikia hadi wanataka kuanzisha azimio. Ile azimio tulinyorosha asubuhi na mapema. Sasa niwaulize, Azimio bila ODM ni kuzimia. Azimio bila ODM si kuzimia. Ni kweli ama si kweli? Tutembee ama tuende pamoja bana? Wangapi wanasema tutatembea pamoja? Harambee!
No, that was it. President Ruto said a lot of stuff, talking about Azimio Kuzimia, talking about the transfer of governmental roles, talking about the things that they have to do, starting with Nairobi, and all that in his speech that he talked about. Now, there are three important things that he said that we want to put before the mirror, and first is the transfer of roles, of course, between Nairobi County Assembly and the national government. And while he's talking about this, he's talking about the roles as first, water services in the county will now be overseen, or will be a role of the national government, or the national government is going to set aside money for that. He's talking of garbage collection, where the national government is also now going to set aside money for that. Then, of course, county roads. He promised even the people of Embakasi pipeline that now the national government is going to take care of that. Now, let's take a look at what really happens. If you take a look at now the constitutional mandate that gives power to the president, for example, and the county government to get into such an arrangement, I think it's covered under now Article 186 and 187, specifically 187 of the Constitution. And it outlines that, of course, this is possible. Power can be transferred between the level of government being the county government and, of course, to the national government. And the reason why this can be done is if the national government shows the competency fit enough to carry that particular role. So actually let's look for Article 187 and read what actually the law says about transfer of functions first before we come back to this analysis. So let's just take a look at what the law really says about transfer of functions and powers between the levels of government, and that is Article 187 1 and all the way within Article 187. And we want to read it first before we go to the enabling statute, which is now the Act of Parliament that sets out the procedure that the county government and the national government lazima wa meet before they declare that they have actually transferred. And if you took a look at what happened with the Sonko scenario, that was actually done. There was a complete transfer of documents, there was a complete publication and stuff. So let's go to what the law says and whether or not the governor of County of Nairobi, Honorable Sakaja, and the President of the Republic followed the law in transfer of these roles. Now 187.1 says, a function or power of government at one level may be transferred to a government at the other level by agreement between the governments if the function or power would be more effectively performed or exercised by the receiving government, and the transfer of the function or power is not prohibited by the legislation under which it is to be performed or exercised. So hata before we go to essentially what this thing inasema ni kwamba this is not prohibited. Functions zinaweza kuwa transferred. National government wanaweza transfer functions to the county government. The county government pia wanaweza transfer functions to the national government, given that the function or power being transferred inaweza kuwa to effectively performed by that. So tunasema, for example, gavana amue there is a national function that they are supposed to do, but the county of Samburu can do it better. Wanaweza transfer functions to that county, wafanye that if the county can do it better than the national government. The same way, the county of Kisii kiamua there is something they are finding difficult to do, they can transfer that function to the national government if the national government inaweza do better. And the second part inasema as long as the transaction or the legislation yenye ina capture this entire transaction has not prohibited your particular transfer. So essentially, as per the first part of Article 187, transfer can be done as long as the party being given the role can do it better. In this case, the national government can do garbage better in Nairobi, hawataipeleka pale KPLC, and of course they can do better when it comes to the roads and to the water, and as long as the law does not prohibit. And then part 2 inasema, if a function or power is transferred from a government at one level to a government at the other level, arrangements shall be put in place to ensure that resources necessary for the performance of the function or exercise of the power are transferred, and constitutional responsibility of the performance of the function or exercise of the power shall remain within the government to which it is assigned by the 4th schedule. So wakisha kutransfer hii stuff, you make sure that resources are in place to make sure that whatever is transferred can be delivered. And number 2, you give the rights, the constitutional rights to that government yenye umetransferia this particular obligations to ensure that yes, they have the power now to actually perform that which you have transferred to them. Now, unaona constitution is a solid document. It is what is called the Grundnorm. But after constitution, kuna other laws. Now, there is the Intergovernmental Relations Act. Yenye sasa inaongelelea the procedure of this particular transfer. And I think that is now in section 25 or 26 of the Intergovernmental, let me just look at it, the Intergovernmental Relations Act. So that we want to see, kama hii transfer iko allowed like that, then what does the county government have to do and what does the national government have to do so that this transfer is effected in a legal manner before president anaweza enda pale pipeline ama embakasi kusema we have actually agreed and we have transferred functions. And I like what President Ruto said, that he has gotten into communication with the county, he's gotten into the communication with the MCAs, which is primary requirements, and now they have even gotten into communications with the governor. So perhaps hii process yote imekuwa ikihappen underway before he communicated. Maybe that would put a legality tag of tick on it, but if that has not happened, then perhaps this is illegal. So what does section 26 of the Intergovernmental Relations Act says? It's long, we will put bits of it on the screen. Now it talks of agreements on transfer or delegation of powers, functions or competencies. Na inasema a transfer or delegation of powers, functions or competencies under this part shall be by written agreement. The agreement for the transfer or delegation under subsection 1 shall include the function, power, competency transferred or delegated, the specific legal provisions supporting the transfer or delegation, the reasons for the transfer or delegation, the performance standards and frameworks in respect of the transfer or delegation, the resourcing framework for the delivery of the powers, function or competency transferred or delegated, the capacity of the receiving entity to exercise or perform the powers, function or competency transferred or delegated, the capacity building framework for enhancing any deficits identified in the entity to which the transfer or delegation has been effected, the method of resolving any dispute that may arise under the agreement, and the terms and conditions. Of course, so this is what part 1 and 2 talks about, but importantly it has to be in writing. Then the agreement shall be signed by the authorized person, so in writing, signed by Sakaja, signed by President Ruto, published in the Kenya Gazette, in the County Gazette in respect of the county to which it relates at least 14 days before the effective date of the transfer or delegation, and the National Assembly shall be notified on the decision to transfer functions or competency, and a county assembly shall be notified on the decision. So hii stuff inafaa ikuwe in writing, signed by Sakaja by now, signed by President Ruto by now, published 14 days in the National Gazette and the County Gazette, National Assembly notified, County Assembly notified before the President can go to Embakasi and said we have transferred roles. So as it stands right now, President William Ruto na Sakaja wameingia kwa deal ya transfer, and we don't know whether all these resources have been transferred, but your deal haiko fiti, it's unconstitutional and it is wrong until all this process have been met. But the president said some impactful stuff about bringing the country together, and he also said that it is very, very important to start with Nairobi, because of course Nairobi is the face of Kenya globally, but it's also important to stick by the law, because the president is the vision carrier, the vision bearer. So if he sticks by the law, then the people will stick by the law, but if he does not stick by the law, then the people might find it very difficult to also stick by the law. Now so Sakaja himself did not make much comment on this. Yeye akisimama, he just communicated a little bit, akasalimia watu wa Nairobi, and he told them 2 term for President William Ruto and 2 term for him. So before we play his news bite on what he actually said when President talked about this stuff, in the media space it's crazy. On X, people are saying that this particular decision is not right, and other people are even becoming prophets of doom, saying that when Sonko just transferred his roles the other time, what happened next is that he was impeached. So could this be possible, that Sakaja is also facing impeachment after transferring these roles? And you see, that is also a possibility, because Sakaja had an impeachment motion on his name sometimes back, and the only thing that saved him was ODM coming together with, of course, Ruto. And right now that Baba is not in the block, perhaps an impeachment could follow quickly after the national government takes these roles. But Sakaja believes that the people of Nairobi are going to give him 2 term alongside President William Ruto. So this is what he said.
Hapa na Governor Mheshimiwa Johnson Sakaja atusalimie. Haya.
Wapi mbwekse ya rais, mbwekse ya rais, mbwekse ya rais. Vijana oye! Vijana oye! Sisi mdosi, mambo mawili tu. Watu wa Nairobi tunakutambua kwa vile umetushikilia na umeshikilia vijana wetu. Vijana wale bado hawana mboka tuwashughulikie. Umetuwekea vijana kwa climate works, kuna vijana wako kwa mijengo. Mdosi anaweza hawezi. Arambe! Arambe! Kwa rais tunasema aje? Na kwa Sakaja tunasema aje? Tubaki pamoja Nairobi, hatutakubali kugawanyishwa kwa misingi ya kikabila. Jirani yako ndio ndugu yako, si ndio hiyo? Wale wanaleta siasa ukabila Nairobi, wakwende huko, si ndio hiyo? Wakwende Ushago, sisi tuko pamoja. Mungu awabariki na walombo tu.
That is what your governor said. Your neighbor is, yes, whatever he said. And if you're bringing tribalism in the city, Ushago is the place for you, and your governor Lombo toves you. Now, whatever that means, that is what the governor said. Didn't make any comments concerning this particular transfer, and he has since been quiet about it. So let's see how it envelops. Whether it will be approved by the National Assembly and the County Assembly, or whether it will be stopped for not having followed these processes. But when Sonko was transferring his to Uhuru Kenyatta, it followed all the processes. It's been a pleasure recapping that for you here at the People's Mirror. Keep it here because our second episode is heated and you're going to love it. It's the race of Jalango and Sifuna, and we are wondering who is behind Jalango and why now against Sifuna within the ODM party structures. Keep it here at your best podcast when it comes to political news. Until our next episode.